His attention was centered on a band of beings that squatted about a dark green pool in the midst of the court. These creatures were black and naked, made like men, but the least of them. Standing upright would have made them tower head and shoulder above the tall pirate. They were gangly rather than massive, but were finely formed, with no suggestion of deformity or abnormality, save as their great height was abnormal. But even at that distance, Conan sensed the basic diablerism of their features. In the Conan universe, the glass-skinned Black Ones are easily one of the most unique demons of the Hyborian Age. Today, we'll be going over their origins as the southern neighbors to an ancient demon empire among the Tumbalku tribes. We'll be covering their marvelous glass cities, theorizing on their previous mission under the dark god Ajujo, and looking into their unique magic used to seal away humans into the small black statues that they're so famously associated with, or force them to dance uncontrollably. As a warning before we begin, I claim no loremaster status, and much of this information is implied throughout the connections in different stories, rather than directly confirmed, as sadly the south of the Hyborian continent has not been heavily expanded on. Now travel with me south of the ruins of Acheron, through the Black Coast, and into the last remaining homes of these obsidian masters of imprisonment. As we begin. Grimdark. Half off! If you'd like to see my progress as I make new content, enlist today through YouTube memberships or Patreon to become a soldier in the Grimdark Legion. My thanks to the men and women who've already served, whose names are listed here. You keep darkness at an affordable price. 3,000 years before the birth of Conan, the great Acheron Empire finally collapsed in the northwest of the Hyborian continent. This happened through a series of slave rebellions from those whose descendants would become the various Middle Eastern and Western peoples of the current setting. However, one particular group of Shemitish ancestors would travel south in search of a god that could be used to claim their own portion of demonic might long before Acheron's collapse. In their travels, they would make peace with various minor tribes within the Black Kingdoms, also looking for power over their larger neighbors. The new cultural people born from this union would likely settle on what would later be known as the Isle of the Black Ones, after sailing away through the Black Coast, as this is the area with the most ruins of their culture. Here, they would be introduced to the worship of the dark god Ajujo, likely by a herald or half-demon of the entity in question from unknown origins. This would be when they would learn about the weapon, which would revolutionize both their own military power and the various cultures of southern Hyboria: sealing magic. The strategic benefit to a force trying to compare with or conquer the Acheron Empire for sealing magic is a foolproof form of hostage-taking. In our theory-crafting video on the Elder Race, we postulated that their morality was opposite to that of normal humans, likely not possessing empathy as a mainstay of their emotional norms. However, even the most brutal psychopath would give in on logical grounds if one of their best generals or most talented crucial figures was taken away. The sealing in question trapping the victim in a black statue that can only be revived through the same water-based ritual that imprisoned them. The only way to ensure their release would be to meet the demands of those in question. Throughout the evolution of the Tumbalku culture and its expansion across the various islands of the Black Coast, followed by its expansion back into the Black Kingdoms, the sway of Ajujo would call many to engage in heraldry, which is a special form of magic in which a human replaces half their soul with a piece of their demon god, often altering their physical form. This can be shown through where their ruins are still found today across the world. As their practice became more common for military purposes, the nature and very desires of the Tumbalku people would be replaced with that of their dark god, now called Ajujo in the north of their territories, Ajuju in the south, and variations of names simply meaning the Dark One. The Father of Black Ones had now taken full sway over the southern world, the Black Ones being the end result of the constant use of heraldry for both religious, ceremonial, and military purposes. It may also have been considered high status to become a black one, given the initial Shemitish, thus aristocratic artisan culture influence on the culture in question we're talking about here. As a brief note on the hypnotic dance magic of the Black Ones, in the Conan universe there is a magic known as mesmerism, which is more of a practice. Given its similarity to certain later in history native African rituals that were designed to induce a religious experience, I believe this to be a carryover from their minor tribes in the Black Kingdom's human heritage. Regardless, it makes for a good complement to the powers of the now demonic people. What makes the Black Ones so unique as a race is both that they are the only race of multi-generational heralds we know of among humans, and the larger role they likely played on the fate of Southern Hyboria, which we'll get into a little later in this video. Common features of all types of Black Ones include obsidian crystallized skin to some degree, increased height, shark-like teeth, and increased skull size, sometimes resulting in deformities. From here, they diverge into three subtypes. We've named these Greater Black Ones, and Grey Ones for the purpose of this video. My creativity truly knows no bounds. Of course, the greatest characteristic of Grey Ones is that when compared to their Black One and Greater Black One associates and family members, they have gray skin. In fact, they look more like humans who are possessed with Acheron souls, which we see in the Age of Conan MMO and also the Dark Horse comics. When Acheronian souls possess Picts, they turn them into these gray, deformed creatures. But the difference with the gray ones, the difference of their anatomy, is that we see black scales of obsidian growing on their body, and of course, the pitch black eyes that they possess. We also see that they're willing to make homes outside of existing Tumbulku ruins, which leads me to the theory that they are a scouting party of lesser children of Ajujo. The power isn't as connected. These are possibly within the world of demons, because one of the things that sealing magic definitely makes me think of when it comes to theory crafting on the Black Ones is that these are a type of demon that they themselves, when separated from a human vessel, can't do anything. They genuinely need possession, and sealing magic clearly exists to make that easier. That when in a pool, what rises out, because to make a true Black One, not a gray one, a true Black One, you have to create them by putting them through the same sealing magic ritual. This is why the hypnotic dance magic is often used to put them in a lulling state. So when we see a gray one, this is likely the result of non-sealing possession or average possession being used by children of Ajujo to eventually create or make a platform for, just as we see in Conan Exiles, they do have a great pool for sealing magic and utilizing sealing magic rituals to create and eventually raise Black Ones, though we don't see Black Ones in Conan Exiles. That is what it would eventually come about. But we do see in the original story, the pool of the Black Ones, that afterwards we see young men being turned into a near statue-like state, being pushed into the sealing magic, but instead of being turned into a black statue, they are raised again as a Black One, and then as more Black Ones show up, it's like the demonic essence or energy of Ajujo fills the air with miasma and mysticism, until eventually the darkness is able to summon a full-formed obsidian giant, and that is a Greater Black One in our eyes. Touching again on sealing magic, as I just went over, the idea of sealing magic, in my eyes, is effectively to make possession easier. The more you possess, the easier sealing magic is. The more sealing magic you have, the more possession is easier, and it goes into a cycle, effectively creating a healthy war machine for what the Tumbulku tribes and the ancestors of the Black Ones were, which is that they were demon supremacists. They genuinely sealed and kept in statues everything that was not a demon. They would do it to effectively elder thing-like entities, and they would do it to humans, and we can see that all throughout the evidence found in Conan Exiles of what was sealed. You will find no demons are sealed, but rather it is elder things and humans and beasts. So this goes into what was this metal used? Why create this metal? Well, if we think about sealing magic as the engine for a war machine, then would it not make sense when we look at the specialized weaponry of the Black Ones, which are obsidian in nature just as their statues are, that these statues and effectively the souls, remember that reincarnation has been proven to be true in Conan, that reincarnation is factually true in Conan. Instead of these souls going on to the next life, or in some cases going on to the paradise promised by the ordered god, or in some cases going to the hell dimensions or whatever, at that point, that soul is instead used in their weapon. This, of course, is a great segue into our next section, which is that, when it comes to being a human, facing down the threat of Acheron, you had the benefit of, if you were taken, you would be taken as a slave. You may be tortured, you may be humiliated, you may go through a number of horrifying things. And what's weird about the psychology of the elder race that populated Acheron is, ironically, the more you were favored as a slave, the more torture they'd put you through because, again, reverse morality, reverse almost everything with them. But when it comes to Tumbalku are just straight demon supremacists who want to kill you. And unlike the people facing Acheron in the Middle East and the West, the people in the Southwest, the people in these very African-themed countries were desperate as anyone would be when facing demon supremacists. And then when we look at and we compare this to the modern age where, with the exception of Zimbabwe, because Zimbabwe is really cool apparently and has super soldiers there, canon Zimbabwe within Conan. I can't speak for modern Zimbabwe, but I hope they're doing well. Punt, Kishan, Darfar, Kush, Amazon, and the Black Kingdoms all have a long line, well, Southern Stygia, all have this long history of dark gods, and it can't be helped but ultimately come up with the theory that because they noticed that they weren't going to be attacked if they were associated with demons, and they weren't going to be attacked, with the exception of Darfar, who reached out to an elder god, but when it comes to most of these entities, reaching out to dark gods makes so much sense, because the demon supremacists who were attacking you are now thrown off, confused, they don't know what to do. It's a great diversionary tactic, and then in addition you have your own demonic power. In the nation of Punt, calling upon the hyena god of fear and son of Jebel Sag, Jamanaka, and his children, the hyena men, who are like weird makeshift shapeshifters who were oddballs who couldn't shapeshift correctly, but calling upon these shapeshifting entities who would teach you dark magic. In the various nations, in Kashan, calling upon Gwaler and his shadow magic to be able to summon dark gargoyles to confuse and break your enemies, who themselves also, the Black Ones, using shadow to their advantage, and various other pools. One could also see a substitute. This is a really great idea, because Gwaler, basically how it works is that when shown in the light of day, his monsters will come about. So the idea of this group of Black Ones taking a accidental false human into the pool, it's in the shadows, but then it comes out, it hits the light of the sun, and it starts wreaking havoc within the Black One tribes. Darfar reaching out to Yog, or Yog-Sothoth, as he is known, an elder one, or an old one, and part of the court of Azathoth, being able to do that and just summon forth leagues of cannibal horrors against their enemies, basically feeding their army and fielding their army with these giant tentacled horrors. And of course, in Kush, you have the various different set worships that you would also find in Stygia, so having that kind of demonic set worship and association with serpentmen is amazing. In the Amazon, having demonic plants and heraldic plants one could make a deal with to protect the women of that tribe and ultimately make them strong super soldiers to protect the people. And then, of course, in the Black Coast. So I can go on and on and on. You know that I'm going on and on about this, but demonic warfare theory is the coolest thing. It explains why the state of Southwestern Hyboria is the way it is. And with the exception of Zimbabwe, which is just basically, hit it with mace and axe, just like in the northwest and the Middle East. But that, with the exception of Zimbabwe, this is what they're doing, and it's really, really cool. It really sets Southwestern Hyboria and its history apart from the rest of the world. That, you know, in each history, there is a way of dealing with the world. We see that in the Far East, it is all about taking magic and putting it as a royal thing, respecting it as the reality warping thing that it is, and associating it with the royal family. In the West, we see a rejection of magic as unnatural, and we see it as putting it, you know, just putting it away. In the Middle East, that was also their same philosophy in some countries, but also in places like Stygia, which has fallen to darkness. It is in a decadent time. We do see a similar philosophy, which is that in that case, darkness is sort of taken over. But in the case of Southwestern Hyboria, their big thing is we have to fight fire with fire. Magic and dark magic is sadly a necessary part of life. Otherwise, we'll end up like our ancestors being hunted and killed by the Tumbalku tribes, by the Black Ones. And it is such a good story, and it is such good world building and natural tribe crafting that you can have with homebrewing in this setting. It's so good. It's so good. I hope you enjoyed this rant and lore talk and theory crafting on top of theory crafting on top of theory crafting. I can't stress that enough, of the Black Ones in Conan. If you enjoyed it, you may enjoy a talk on their god Ajujo. You might be wondering, hey, why didn't you go deeper into that? Well, that's because we already have our All Gods in Conan mega video, which is 5 hours long. We mention Ajujo there, and we go over a full section of Ajujo, or you can also find him, I believe, in part 4 of that same series if you're looking for the individual episodes. I'd like to thank you all for watching. The reason Conan videos have been on a hiatus is because I've been worried about messing up on them. I'll be honest, as it's the bread and butter of the channel, my anxiety towards doing these videos kind of got the better of me, and it resulted in me not doing them. It's a horrible thing when you want to preserve or make something better so much that you end up fearing it, putting it on a pedestal, and then being too scared to do it. So if there's a lesson from my hiatus from Conan, it is that you shouldn't be so in love with something that you think it's unapproachable. Next video, I don't know, will probably be a conglomeration or a big mixtape of the unique monsters in Conan. That would be the unique monster videos that I've done already, put together in one video. We'll see how long that lasts. If it's over an hour, then we'll put it up as a compilation. Thank you all for watching, and have a lovely night.